This episode is brought to you by the Toyota Grand Highlander. Life's journey brings constant change filled with exciting surprises and grand challenges. And with its spaciousness, power, and style, the Toyota Grand Highlander is more than a vehicle. It's your partner in embracing all life throws at you. From the spacious adult-sized third row to seating for up to 8 passengers, the Toyota Grand Highlander is up for every grand challenge. Learn more at toyota.com/Grand Highlander. Toyota, let's go places.
This Steve Jones Show podcast is now loading. The Steve Jones Show podcast is presented by Sunbury Motor Company, Purdy Insurance, and Brewers Outlet. Bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Brewers Outlet, Sunbury Motor Company, and Purdy Insurance. Now from the Sunbury Motor Studio, here's Steve Jones.
And this half hour brought to you by Purdy Insurance, Market Street in Sunbury. Go to purdyinsurance.com. Auto, home, life, business, boat, motorcycle, RV. They do a great job of making sure, A, you're fully insured, and then they go to great lengths to make sure they save you money. So important, especially in these times, because customer service means everything to them. It is all at Purdy Insurance, Market Street in Sunbury. Go to purdyinsurance.com. Pro Day today at Holuba Hall, and joining us now is T. Frank Carr. T. Frank, welcome back, my friend. It's great to see you today.
Yeah, it was good to see you. How long did you stick around, Steve?
Stuck around till about 11, right? So I was there for, I don't know, almost 2 hours. Not bad.
Yeah, good. Enough time to say hi, do your celebrity appearance, talk to all the important people as the ambassador you are. Yes, rubbing elbows, hobnobbing. It's what I do. It's great to be the ambassador. Yeah. Today, I've always looked at today. People will talk, of course, the headline will be that Carter and Warren didn't do anything. Yeah.
It's 2025. No offense. I don't think they have to do anything. They're not going to, their stocks are going to change one way or the other, whether they do something or not.
Yeah, it's just fun for us. It's the bummer of, I didn't get to put out the video of Abdul Carter running a 4.49 or a 4.38 or whatever he'd run. It's just at that point, it's just to show off, I think, for Abdul Carter, if he's healthy and all those things. And for Tyler Warren, to your point, he doesn't have to, they don't have to do any of these things. So why risk anything? And if you're not 100% in Carter's case, why put anything out there that might tell people, well, maybe he isn't as good as we think he is, which would be nonsense. But this is kind of a nonsense thing. Some people take, these things, the testing numbers and run away with them in certain situations. Not everybody, but some people. And so, I think to me, it's always a good day for those guys that need to prove something, and the guys that can then shine when, I guess the only thing would be is if those guys participated, there might have been more eyeballs for a guy like Jalen Reed doing his field drills or for Kobe King today. So I think, to me, that's the only negative is for the other guys that are there.
Yeah, because Reed put up his numbers in Indianapolis, and he stuck by his numbers. That's what he did. But other guys, I felt today was important, especially anybody who could be a late day 2 or a day 3 guy versus an undrafted free agent. To me, I thought, I don't know what you think, but I think this day is valuable in that regard for these guys.
Yeah, there are 3 guys that I think aced it in that regard. And I don't think that, not necessarily that some of these guys were teetering on going undrafted. I always thought Kobe King would be drafted, but he put together a day today that was excellent and I think firmly secures him as a middle-round draft pick. Running a 4.63 was the biggest thing for him. Like, speed was a question. He talked about that afterwards, where he wanted to prove that to people. And so coming in at 2.36, I mean, Steve, if football doesn't work out for him, he can just go have a job as an action figure or an extra in movies, because the dude is built perfectly. If you were to lab grow a human with perfect muscle definition, it would look like Kobe King. Like, it's just crazy the way he looks without his shirt on. And to run a 4.63 and have the other numbers he had and the fluidity, jumping almost 10 feet in the broad jump, I think he aced it. Today was a big day for him, and I think that it secured him as I would imagine, a mid-round draft pick, and a guy that can start in the NFL with those numbers, and his film, which, as we know, against the run, is absolutely excellent.
Two other guys I thought helped themselves based on what they did with the numbers today would be Jalen Kimber and Keziah Izzard. What were your thoughts?
Steve, I'm going to start with Jalen Kimber and then end with Keziah Izzard. So Kimber, I absolutely agree, running a 4.39. He's the guy, when you turn on the film, he can cover anybody. There was very few receivers that got away from him last season. Even Jeremiah Smith, when they played, he had reasonably good coverage on him. Mm-hmm. Now, it wasn't the hardest task on the day because for some reason Ohio State forgot he was on the football field and rarely threw him the football. But when you watch him run with Jeremiah Smith downfield, as the hardest receiver on the schedule last year, Kimber had no problem covering him. He's got good film as a zone corner, and he showed he's got the speed play man coverage. So ball productivity, that's going to be the major thing for him that I think a lot of teams are going to ask about. But in terms of athleticism, he proved he's an NFL player, a guy that I think even has starting NFL caliber tools, but it's the conversation of the production on the field and how long it took him to get there. Today was actually a little bit cathartic for me watching Keziah Izzard perform, because I remember – it might have been even on your show back in the day when Keziah Izzard was recruited to Penn State. I remember looking at this dude on film at DeMatha and thinking, this guy can be a complete defensive tackle. Like that prototypical 3 technique that could be explosive and big enough to be great against the run and a pocket compressor and athletic. So then he jumps the second highest out of anybody at the Pro Day today with 33.5 inches. Would have been like the third best at the Combine. A 9.5 broad jump, and then a 4.8 140. Yeah. Steve, he was the only lineman that took his shirt off, and he had good reason to do it. Because the dude, again, is absolutely built. But then you ask the question, why didn't he ever produce in college? Why was he never a starter? With all of that talent, why was he always just a rotational piece? Why was he passed up by a guy like Zane Durant? So with those numbers, that's like a second-round draft pick at 305. You know, he is the complete defensive tackle. Where he falls, to me, is a complete wild card. But I think those are draftable numbers, even with those questions about film and production, in the college level, because you just don't find dudes that can do that. That's freaky.
The fact that he got out there and ran today, I thought this was a pivotal day for KJ Winston because of what has happened to him within the last 8-9 months. What were your thoughts watching him, and how important was the day for him?
It was – he still doesn't look like KJ. You know, when you watching him in person when he's healthy, he's just different. His explosiveness, the bounciness in him, he looked like a really good football player. And he ran a 4.5, so that's really good. It's not great for KJ Winston, and he told us that was the second full-speed 40 he's run since returning to play or returning to participation, which I believe, based on Adam Schefter's tweet the other month, was March 1st. So he's 5 months out from his surgery. This is all really great stuff. And, Steve, I'm super annoyed. I mean, let me say, I'm really happy for KJ, but I am desperate for the Bills to find a safety that has athleticism like him. And, like, running a 4.5 basically on one leg, the dude is going to get drafted in the second round. If it doesn't happen, that's the sort of idiocy that I don't understand personally. I think he's going to be the best of the best that's come out of Penn State in the secondary because the skills and the tools he has at nearly 6'2", running a 4.5. He was telling us that he could run in the 4.3s before he got hurt. Those are all. If he had played this year, this is a guy that should have been a first-round draft pick. So he's going to be cleared for training camp, he said, and that might be a little bit of something that makes teams nervous. If they're going to invest a high draft pick, you want to get something out of a guy, and if he's super rusty during his rookie season, I think those are all valid reasons that you might say, okay, we can wait a little bit. but the first team that pulls the trigger on him is going to get a guy that for the next 4 years, if nothing else happens to him, and not knock on wood, this should be a guy that is a standout in the NFL.
Yeah, well, because I'll be asked to do interviews for various shows across the country, and they'll ask me, give me an under the radar guy that you think from Penn State to steal. I said, well, KJ Winston, because nobody saw him play last year.
Yep.
And he has, I think he's, you mentioned the times, I think he's, in his career, he's been like at his best has been like 4.37, 4.38, some number around there.
He said he ran a 4.3, and I will draw the line that he did not run a 4.30 because that's just insane at 210 pounds.
No,
I assumed it was in the 4.3. So yeah, that's what he said. I would imagine that I believe for sure. But and again, at that size, that's game changing ability that can play at any position in the secondary.
Well, it's interesting because. He has got all the tools you're asking for in that position. And you're right. The Bills are sitting there. You're like, okay, interesting.
Two twos. They got 2 second-round draft picks, I'm just hoping. Because I'm tired of watching great receivers just run around the field on them. But anyway, this is not a Bills podcast.
But it does seem to warp in that direction. No, I'm just kidding. Look, I thought, how interested are you by numbers versus how interested are you by video?
Yeah, so I think the numbers are important. There's a reason we do this. There's a reason that, teams, all 32 teams flew people from across the country to come and watch these guys in person, because these numbers over time, they do point to, if a guy is going to be successful, he has to fall within these parameters, doing these drills from what we've seen. Film is always the most important thing, but you can then separate one versus the other if two guys are close based on their athleticism scores and their ability to run. We can't call football a game of inches and then disregard the inches in measurement when we do the combine. You just can't over-invest in it. You can't make it the driving force of whether you pick a guy or move a guy up or down your board to an extreme degree. Like, again, Keziah Izzard, the film to me says this is a guy, it's obvious he has talent. I was watching the combine and I thought, okay, there's a couple defensive tackles out there that I was watching them and I'm like, Keziah Izzard is a better athlete than these guys. He should be at the combine. But those players were starters. And so I don't want to, I'm not trying to beat up on Keziah, but like, this is kind of the dichotomy. He's a perfect example of the division between the two, that sometimes they matter a lot, and then sometimes they don't matter as much, and the player is better or worse than those numbers indicate. So it is a fine line, but I'm always interested in knowing the numbers and the athleticism and the testing, because it paints a picture and it fills in the details that you always want to know if you're a fan or somebody like me who rides the line between fan and completely obsessed, stalker of numbers and data.
Well, if I'm a coach, a scout, general manager, and I see certain numbers, and, because I pretty much know where we're going here, rounds 1 and 2 and 3. And on a day like this, I'm going to look at the guys that could be in round 2 and definitely day 3, okay? There may be somebody who puts up numbers where I sit back and go, you know what? Let's make sure we call up his video. I want to take a long look at this guy. These numbers are worthy of a look. That's how I look at what today means. Yeah, and that's fair. And it's that adage of it makes you go back and look at a guy again. And any opportunity you have to be memorable in this process when there's thousands of players trying to get drafted is absolutely something that's important. And I think for a guy like Jalen Kimber, that number is really important because it'll make you go back and you'll say, okay, maybe you were looking at somebody else, and suddenly you're going back and you're watching the Ohio State film, or you're watching something that happened in the Oregon game. It might make you look at it in a different light, and I think those are important things to do. So I agree with that in terms of how that affects the process. But there are certain numbers
there are certain things that will kind of be either a prohibitor in terms of I don't know if we can do anything with that, or a guy that, on the positive side, like you mentioned, that will take you back to that player to watch them again.
Oh, by the way, the other guy I thought ran a pretty good time was Sal Wormley today. We haven't really talked much about him, but I thought Sal went out and put together a decent time for a guy that's an interior lineman.
Yeah, for somebody who's 330 pounds and came in, 6'3", 327. The 40 time is good, for a guy that size. I would say, talking about some of those other metrics, the explosiveness, which is something that for a guy who's very powerful, if you're going to be running a gap scheme with him and you want him to just get into double teams and maul guys, that may not matter. But that explosiveness, I think that was the area where he struggled a little bit today. Didn't have a great broad, didn't have a great vertical, but you put him into a football situation and he's going to be able to move some bags and move some pads, and he's built like a tank. So those are all some positive things. But I think he did a good job of proving kind of who he is. There's a lot of film out there now on Sal Wormley of the guard, and so I wouldn't say that there was anything that was prohibitive, but there were the 40 time was definitely his best thing he did today.
Look, he didn't hurt himself. And sometimes that's the best thing you do. You don't hurt yourself. Vanover runs a 4.76, didn't hurt him. So things like that happen. You didn't hurt yourself, and that's the bottom line.
Can I ask you, Steve, about Vanover? Because that's a guy I'm interested in. What do you think he is for the NFL at the next level? Is he a defensive end? Is he kind of a 5 technique? Do you think they'll ask him to bulk up again and play defensive tackle? He's the kind of guy that I think is a wild card in this situation, because depending on the team and the scheme, he could play 3 different positions on the defensive line, and I don't have a good read in my mind of what he is at the next level.
I think he's a defensive end at the next level, because when you're 258 right now, he does have a good frame on him, but I'm not going to take him and put him up to 285, 290. Because I think he becomes less effective. Even though he has the frame, I think they can handle it. The question is, can he handle it and keep the quickness he has? So I would get him out at that defensive end spot, but I also would not be afraid to use him in a zone drop scheme, because I think he can put himself into a coverage where, because Penn State played zone drop, zone read, right?
Yeah.
Because they do that. That's always been an advantage for Penn State players that play the defensive end spot, because they've had the ability to drop and show that kind of versatility, which you and I both know coordinators love the ability to have the option of being able to come at you from different angles. And if you can have an end that can drop, I can come at you from a different angle.
And he's got giant tennis rackets for hands, so he can get those into passing lanes pretty well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, but I think he's an end at this spot. It's one thing they never really did do with him here. You know how they'll take an end and they'll play him at the nose when they go with 3 down linemen? Manny did that, and Tom did that. They never did that with Vanover. He was a guy that was not okay. So that tells me something. That's what that tells me.
Yeah, that's a good observation. Yeah.
Always a pleasure, my friend. Thanks for jumping on. By the way, you have a first choice at quarterback. It would be who?
Oh, I've got Josh Allen, so I haven't looked at a quarterback in 5 years. But I would say probably I'm torn. I've heard enough good things about Cam Ward. I have seen Shadur Sanders, and I do like Shadur Sanders because I think he plays the game in a smart way. I think he's responsible with the football. I think he's super accurate. He's got a really quick release. Like, he's really quick with the football. I haven't done a deep dive on either of these guys, but I don't buy Jackson Dart being a first-round pick. I think he is good. I was impressed with him watching him in the Peach Bowl. My concern is just, like, he gave me really good college quarterback vibes, but I don't know what the upside would be in him to take him in the first round. And so I don't think the arm is bad. I don't think, he's unathletic. There's nothing that really stands out about Dart. So this would be a year that I would love to trade my first-round draft pick, so I would have it next year for next year's quarterback class. I think that's my best assessment of this class is how do I get to next year with two ones in case I need to get a quarterback.
Sanders, short intermediate throws. I think he's terrific. the other part is, if you're a high draft pick as a quarterback, you're going to go to a lousy offensive line team. It's almost a given. He is tough as nails. USC pounded that. Yeah. USC pounded him into the turf at the Coliseum that night 2 years ago. Kept getting up. Arizona kept pounding him into the turf in the Alamo Bowl. Kept getting up. That impressed the heck out of me. As for Dart, the complaints about him would be, is he a system quarterback? Okay. And then people complain about pressure in his face and how his feet react. Every quarterback is lousy when they have pressure in their face. But he's, to me, he's a second. To me, he's a second-round pick.
Yeah, which I have a theory about second. This is the problem: is there's no such thing as a second-round pick at quarterback. Like, that's a working theory I have, because if you're a second-round pick, you become a first-round pick based on value and need and desperation, which creates this unrealistic expectation, and it cuts out the middle class of quarterbacks. So you're either a first-round draft pick or you're like a fifth-round draft pick. Like, there's second and third round quarterbacks are so rare. And I know, like, Russell Wilson exists, and I was Drew Brees back in the day, but very few quarterbacks that are like second-round picks actually end up as second-round picks. I agree with you in terms of his value, but it's just a working theory I've had, or I've been trying to flesh this out of that it's a myth. The second-round quarterback is a myth. So if you're right, I think he is going in the first round, I guess is where I'm ended up here. So 3 first-round draft pick quarterbacks maybe.
Yeah, Jalen Hurts was a 2. So you've had some. They've had some. And boy, Lamar Jackson was
poking holes in my theory.
And Lamar Jackson was so close to it too.
Right. But he was a first-round draft pick. That's where it started. That in my theory, that's where it started. Because you got to get that fifth-year option on the contract, it's worth all that stuff too. Yeah.
Well, the other part too is pro day. Two of the worst pro days ever were Peyton Manning and Lamar Jackson. Seemed to pan out. So, you never know. You never know. T. Frank, you're the best. You're the best, buddy. Appreciate it. It was great seeing you today. Thanks a lot for your time.
As always, Steve, thanks for having me.
Thomas Frank Carr, Blue White Illustrated on 3.com on News Radio 1070 WKOK.
Hey, where have you been?
I'm laying low.
Laying low?
Yeah, the heat's on because of my new Hyundai from Sunbury Motors. I got $7,000 off on a new Hyundai Santa Fe. They're gonna think I stole it.
Deal's so right, it almost feels wrong. At Sunbury Motors Hyundai, during the Hyundai Getaway Sales Event, take $3,500 off, plus 1.99% APR financing for 60 months, or $7,000 off on all 23 of the 2024 Hyundai Santa Fe's available, which start under $40,000. Take up to $10,000 off, or 0% APR financing for 60 months on 7 new Hyundai Ioniqs, starting under $42,000. And as always, military and first responders get an extra $500 off their purchase. Plus, all new Hyundais come with Hyundai Assurance and America's best warranty, 10 years, 100,000-mile powertrain warranty. Come down to Sunbury Motors Hyundai today, and together we can be alive in 2025. Sunbury Motors Hyundai in the North 4th Street Auto Plaza, Sunbury.
107 years ago, Ford Motor Company introduced their first truck, the Model TT, revolutionizing how America works and drives. And for 107 years, Sunbury Motors has been the name Central PA trusts for trucks. That's why we're celebrating our 107th annual Truck Month with over 125 brand new trucks on the lot at Sunbury Motors, 943 North 4th Street in Sunbury. We've got 24 Ford Mavericks, 61 Ford F-150s, and 29 Super Duties ready to roll, and they're all priced to move. Take up to $15,000 off a 2024 Ford F-150. Grab a 2024 Ranger with $5,500 off, or drive home a 2024 Maverick starting at under $31,000. It's a March filled with madness, so don't wait. Come see the selection at Sunbury Motors today, where together we'll be alive in 2025.